Well, hello there. We are moving on to stage 3 of our writing course, which puts us at 1/4 of the way through. We are still keeping with the basic structure at this stage, but slowly moving towards the finer details of each section in a composition. So let's get into it. As usual, here's the menu we will be following in this video. We are going to be looking at the structure of an email today. This is really important because more and more communication is being done by email. I hope a few of the tips I give you in this video will help you correspond with others in a more professional way in the future. You may notice that this week, one part has a different title. What used to be just observe is now called observe and notice. Noticing is an important part of learning a skill, and I hope you'll do it more in your everyday studies. Although we have been doing this anyway in the past 2 stages, I thought I would add it to the title here just to make it clearer. Before we get onto that section though, let's have a quick look at the structure for today. We started off this series by talking about the importance of a composition having a structure, and I hope by now you know what I mean when I say that a composition needs to look like a hamburger. We also talked about the importance of paragraphs, and that each paragraph should follow the same topic. This week, we are going to have a brief look at the structure of an email which follows this same basic structure. In an email, or letter if you prefer, we still should have an introduction, body, and conclusion. We also need to remember that each paragraph should still follow the same topic within. It might be good to note here that in the case of emails, often our paragraphs will be shorter, and we have a few more topics within the email. Generally, in the introduction, we want to refer to something that has occurred in the past. It might be a previous email or the last time we met that person. If there is a question to be answered or a main point to the email, we should be answering that as early as possible, preferably in the first paragraph of the body. If we have extra information to add to the main point, add an extra paragraph, or however many are needed to do so. In the final paragraph of the body, start talking about the future. Is there anything you would like the other person to do? Do you want to make any plans for some future event? This is the place to put that information. Finally, in the conclusion, you can finish off the email with some nice greeting. This can be kept short. I mentioned last week that the introduction and conclusion are about 15% of the entire length of the composition each, but in the case of an email, it is much shorter. So how does all of this look in an actual email? Here, we have an example of an email. First, you can see that the paragraphs have been written very clearly, which is a great habit to get into. When you write your paragraphs, either open a free line between the paragraphs or indent the first line. Avoid doing both. Let's look at each section a little more closely. It is a given that in the introduction, we have Dear Yuki at the start. The writer refers to a past event, which in this case is their meeting at a conference. There are 2 short paragraphs in this introduction, which, as I said earlier, is acceptable for an email. If this were an essay, however, I would probably combine these 2 paragraphs. So we see that the writer is still referring to their meeting in that second paragraph. And then finally, at the end of the introduction, we see the main purpose for writing this email. Like we talked about last week, the paragraphs in the body in this email are keeping with the same topic within. Here, we see the writers discussing the fixed and growth mindsets. From the very beginning of the paragraph, this topic is clear, and he or she sticks with that throughout the entire paragraph. We see the same here. In this paragraph, there is extra information to support that in the previous paragraph. And there are even a couple of ideas for the reader to do further study. Whoever wrote this is an absolute champion. Then in the final paragraph of the body, the writer is looking towards the future. He or she is changing the topic, so there is a new paragraph. Also, there are some questions for Yuki to answer in his or her reply. We'll get back to those later on. The conclusion is very short. If you write an essay or composition like in stage 2, I expect this to be much longer. Vivian is asking Yuki for some information and advice about Japan. When Yuki writes his or her reply, this will probably be the main focus. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to imagine you are Yuki, who received the email from Vivian that we saw in this video. Remember those questions we were talking about 2 slides back? Now it's your turn to write a reply to Vivian. Read through Vivian's email carefully and think about what you will write in your reply. As always, I expect you to have this prepared before class, so you can get some good, meaningful advice from others. Well, that's it for stage 3. Make sure you check the structure for writing an email once again. You can use this, of course, when writing emails in your everyday life. Your emails don't have to be as long as the one you saw here, of course, but they can still follow a similar structure. Alright, I'm out of here. See you in class.